this evening, sponsored by Courts, bringing value home. NGSA results released. Improvement in passes in English. Mathematics results continue to nosedive. Dr. Joey Jagan reacts to the CCJ's ruling. Anyone who leads the PPP into the 2020 polls will be defeated, says Dr. Jagan. And nothing untoward being done at Movie Town, Guyana. Chairman Derek Chin promises first-class entertainment. HGP Nightly News begins now. Good evening to our viewers here in Guyana and online. I'm Travis Chase with the Thursday, June 28 edition of the HGP Nightly News. Here's what you need to know this evening. This year's top student, Nyla Rahaman of Westfield Primary, is the first to obtain a perfect score at the National Grade 6 Assessment Examination. Javon Vickery opens our broadcast this evening with this story.
This year's top student is Nyla Rahaman of Westfield Prep. Rahaman is the first NGSA student to achieve a perfect score at the exam. The elated student explained that prayers and commitment to her studies were the contributing factors to her success.
In the month of Ramadan, I made lots of prayers to Allah, so I feel very happy and very glad and I'm very grateful.
Did you expect it to fall?
Not really.
Which exam was the most challenging for you?
I would say it would be science paper 2 or social studies paper 2.
And how did you prepare for the exam?
Well, I had to study a lot and be very disciplined.
Arthur Roberts of the New Guyanaese School placed second at this year's examination. He scored 225 marks and stated that while his expectations were high, he never envisioned his placement at the exam. Roberts plans to be a pediatrician.
Preparation, I had to give up a lot of my extracurricular activities such as playing sports and watching a lot of television and playing games on my tablet and other electronic devices.
Crystal Duncan of the New Guyanaese School finished third and stated that preparation for the exam took time and effort. She stated that she received support from her parents and teachers. Sienna Barkoye of the North Georgetown Primary School tied the third spot. She stated that the difficult part of her preparation was giving up her extracurricular activities.
My studies to get to this point was very hard because I had to study a lot and sacrifice playing, watching TV, and other extracurricular activities, example stillband.
Javon Vickery, HGP Nightly News.
Congratulations, Nyla Rahaman. Meanwhile, the improvement at this year's National Grade 6 Assessment Examination has been attributed to the dedication of teachers, students, and an increase in government spending on the education sector. Javon Vickery has the story.
The results illustrate that in the field of social studies, 46% of the students who wrote the exam gained 50% or more, compared with 47% in the previous year. In the field of science, 46% of students gained 50% or more marks, which is the same as last year. In mathematics, 38% of the students who wrote scored more than 50% or more, compared with 45% in the previous year. 60% of the students who wrote the English exam scored more than 50%, compared to 54% in 2017. Minister of Education Nicolette Henry explained that in all administrative regions, there was an improvement in the performance in English language.
An improved performance is really an output indicator. It is the indication of a lot of hard work, a lot of systems that were put in place, a lot of procedures, a lot of initiatives that were implemented by the Ministry of Education. And let me just touch on three perhaps. I want you to understand that from 2015 to now, as a government, we took some decisions to support the education sector.
Minister Henry further noted that the investment of additional funds in the education system was one of the many contributing factors for the improved performance of students. She added that coupled with the dedication of teachers and students, the increase gives the education system a positive outlook.
Used to be less than 20% of the budget allocated. As I speak now, it's over 20% allocated to education, because we recognize that we have to invest in our people. And so that requires us recruiting additional supporting staff, developing and strengthening the existing programs to result in the kind of results that you see today. And
as it pertains to the lagging performance of the hinterland students as against the other regions, Chief Education Officer Marcel Hudson stated that the ministry will embark on an exercise to increase performance in these regions.
We have recognized that, and so what we have started to do is to establish satellite teacher training centers in the hinterland communities. For example, if we look at Region 8, we will recognize that Region 8 probably is one of the poorest performing regions, and I think a couple of months ago we commissioned the center there, and I think some 50 teachers now are in training, and so that is one of the areas. The other thing, it has to do with content and methodology. So what we are doing is exposing our teachers in the hinterland communities to a series of developmental sessions.
Javon Vickery, HGP Nightly News.
After the break, Dr. Joey Jagan reacts to the CCJ's ruling. Anyone who leads the PPP into the 2020 polls will be defeated, says Dr. Jagan. Stay with us. HGP Nightly News continue. Welcome back to the HGP Nightly News. We have word from Chairman of Movietown Guyana on the much talked about breach of the investment agreement allegation. Nothing untoward is being done at Movietown Guyana, says its chairman. Here are the details. Chairman of Movietown Guyana, Derek Chin, has broken his silence on several allegations published in the local press, which allege that Movietown Guyana was in serious breach of its investment agreement. Under concession agreements with government, investors or foreign contractors can bring in equipment duty-free once that equipment is used for the specific project. Chin said the headlines befuddle him.
We are quite puzzled by that statement. As far as we are aware, we have concluded and finalized all the information that was required, all the documentation that was required in order to facilitate the number of concessions that were given. The specific concessions that were part of the investment agreement was the concession over cinema equipment, the duty-free.
GRA's head Godfrey Stacia had stated in a press release that equipment currently being utilized in the construction of Movietown was in breach of the terms of another investment development agreement, since, based on the agreement, equipment earmarked for use on another major project was being utilized in the construction of Movietown. Nothing untoward is being done at Movietown, Chin noted.
And as far as I'm aware, that is the only concession that we've ever had from GRA, and there was no preferential treatment and nothing that would put us in any advantageous situation beyond the fact that we are a major investor. I'm a little concerned about these comments and these headlines that are very unfounded and gives the impression that Movietown has done something untoward.
Chin, at a recent tour of the complex, referred to bureaucratic hurdles hampering the opening of the more than $40 million United States dollars complex. Chin believes that his statement was taken out of context.
We mentioned that there was a time that it could have been done a little quicker, but that's normal in any enterprise or any business. And we don't hold GRA or anybody responsible for that. We are here to work with them and to achieve the necessary requirements in order to continue with our business.
Construction of Movietown commenced in 2011, and with a 2018 opening, Chin promises first-class entertainment for the Guyanese people.
We feel very, very confident that this particular enterprise will certainly add a tremendous value to the country and raise the landscape of your way of life and standards of life.
Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News. Dr. Joey Jagan, the son of the founder of the People's Progressive Party and late Presidents Dr. Cheddi Jagan and Mrs. Janet Jagan, has reacted to the CCJ's third-term ruling. But his focus was on the person who will lead his father's party into the 2020 elections. Royden James reports.
The CCJ on Tuesday ruled that a person can only be president of this country for 2 terms, and reactions to the ruling are coming in. The outspoken Dr. Joey Jagan gave his views on the matter on Thursday.
Bad luck, Mr. Jagdeo. Try the next time round somewhere else.
The younger Jagan campaigned for the People's Progressive Party in 2011, and after some internal matters, he campaigned for the coalition in 2015 and has been very outspoken about corruption in the PPP government. Mr. Jagdeo thinks that whoever the party chooses as its presidential candidate will emerge as the next head of state. Dr. Jagan thinks that statement by the opposition leader should be featured at a comic show.
To tell you the truth, I think all of them, I can't think anyone of them being president of this country. And that's the truth.
Mr. Jagan did say that
he will control things, yeah.
He did say he intends to play a formal role should the PPP form the next government. But then he later says he wants a job in the next government if his party wins, where he can work for like 3 days and stuff, perhaps an advisory position.
There ain't got no job for Mr. Jagdeo in the next government. There ain't gonna be no PPP government in the next time round. I'm telling you that right now.
Then the announcement of a presidential bid by Mr. Charles Ramson Jr. also failed to get a positive nod from Dr. Jagan. He feels Mr. Ramson does not have the locus standi to lead his father's party into any election, not even a mock election.
Mr. Ramson is barking up the wrong tree. He ain't gonna make it.
You don't think he stands a chance?
Nah, even if he makes it, the Guyanese people are not stupid. Would they think we are ignorant and stupid? That we gonna accept that a hand-picked man, just like Bar Jagdeo was hand-picked. He didn't go through any democratic process to become the leader of Guyana, except the general election, which you know what's going on there. It's Cheddi Jagan and the cop. That's it. Cheddi Jagan and the cop. They didn't care who, you could take a farmer and put him there. It's Cheddi Jagan and the cop. Right? So Bar Jagdeo understands why he got a hand-pick that he can control in Mr. Ramson. So anybody who thinks that Mr. Ramson will become a good president of Guyana is making another big mistake. Because look at what we had with Mr. Jagdeo. He was no good president. I don't care anybody says.
Long-standing member of the People's Progressive Party, Gail Teixeira, is also likely to be considered for the presidential candidacy. She too, according to Dr. Jagan, cannot do well for Guyana.
Do you think Mr. Shearer would make a good presidential candidate?
Who?
Mr. Shearer.
Who?
Gail Teixeira.
Sir, if you would have a serious look in your mouth, I thought you were just joking. Gail Teixeira being president? Can never happen. God won't let it happen. There's a God and he'd never allow it to happen. Gail Teixeira? Are you kidding me? Gail Teixeira don't know nothing.
The younger Dr. Jagan hopes that his father's party will rise again. But from the look of things, he says, that don't look like anytime soon. Royden James, HGP Nightly News.
Thank you, Royden. Good news now. A young Guyanese woman, Mara Landrivine, was presented with the 2018 Queen's Young Ladies Award by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II on Tuesday at the Buckingham Palace, London, in recognition of the work she is doing to transform lives in her community. Kristen McLingham reports.
Marva Langevin from Guyana.
According to the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, although this is the final year of the Queen's Young Leaders Program, the legacies of this program will carry on for generations to come. Young change makers from 38 Commonwealth countries were bestowed with the awards this year in recognition of the work they have done to improve the lives of people in their communities and beyond.
The issues all of you have chosen to take on are at the very core of some of the world's biggest challenges. from tackling stigma around mental health and promoting gender equality to changing mindsets and habits in order to conserve our natural world. And you are all making a huge difference. Your generation is the first that will have to deal hands-on with topics and issues that have been known about for a very long time. You are the future leaders who will need to pick up the baton on issues such as climate change, food security, equality and access to education, and improving the lives of the most vulnerable people in our communities.
Prince Harry addressing the awardees at Buckingham Palace on Tuesday. He explained that the pace of change is occurring much faster across the world than it did 100 years ago. The Duke of Sussex added that a more interconnected world means any local problem can evolve into a global issue overnight, and the work done by these individuals from the 38 Commonwealth countries can and will make a positive difference.
But at the same time, the technology and innovation driving this interconnectivity means that any local solution can become a global solution just as fast. In this rapidly changing world, it is heartening to meet so many inspiring young people gathered here today, who have already stepped up as leaders and improved the lives of so many people across the Commonwealth. You are the hope and optimism that the world needs, and we will do everything that we can to support you in it.
The award winners were greeted by Prince Harry and the Duchess of Sussex, who chatted and joked with them. The ceremony was also attended by soccer star David Beckham and former UK Prime Minister John Major. Reporting for HGP Nightly News, I am Kristen Macklingham.
Congratulations, Mara Landrivine. Opposition leader Bar Jack Dio appears to be coming to terms with the reality of his political future, but says he's confident that the PPP will return to power without him as the presidential candidate. Martin James reports.
Mr. Jack Dio made clear from the onset that he has never lost an election he contested, and if he could have or had any intention of running again, he would have swept the majority to regain power. But now that the CCJ has ruled that Mr. Jack Dio cannot sweep again, the opposition leader in his usual style on Thursday expressed confidence that the PPP will form the next government in this country. He said the coalition has set the bar so low that any person from the PPP can run and win the next elections.
The reason there is so much interest in who will be the PPP's candidate at the next election is simply because that person will be the next president of Guyana. Contrast this with the struggle that is taking place now within APNU.
Mr. Jack Dio said that the majority of Guyana knows that the People's Progressive Party will be back in 2020, and that is why the government and their supporters are running scared.
We'll work hard, all of us will work hard to ensure a PPP victory in 2020. So I notice, I want to assure people in our base particularly, because they get a little worked up and worried when they see all of this going on, worried about the future. And I say to them, don't worry about the future. We are not going to allow, we're not departing the scene as some people would wish.
But before anything else, the party has to select a person as presidential candidate, and already young Charles Ramson Jr. has signaled his intention to contest the post to be PPP's presidential candidate. Mr. Jack Dio has already said that the next PPP presidential candidate has to possess certain qualities, and to this end he was asked whether the younger Ramson is in that category.
The youngest Charles Ramson would have announced that he's interested to contest for the party's presidential candidate. Do you see Mr. Ramson fall within the category which you would have outlined a presidential candidate would be outlined Tuesday?
I will, at the appropriate time, share my views. Others will share their views. People who receive nominations will then be placed on a ballot, and the members of the Central Committee will vote. And whoever emerges with the top vote, the entire party will support that person. That is how we work.
Among the names being floated to emerge as presidential candidate for the PPP are Irfan Ali, Frank Anthony, Anil Nandlal, Charles Ramson Jr., and Gil Teixeira.
Mr. Jagdeo, what if who the party select challenges you for whatever reason, because as it is now, you're seen more or less as the face of the People's Progressive Party.
That person will have to have their profile. They get a chance to build a profile, and that person has to create their own space too.
Roy Den James, HGP Nightly News.
In the Caribbean Court of Justice has deemed the mandatory death penalty in Barbados a breach of the island's constitution. The CCJ ruled on Wednesday that the mandatory death penalty deprived the court of the opportunity to exercise the quintessential judicial function of tailoring the punishment to fit the crime, since a murder accused found guilty is automatically sentenced to death in Barbados, where execution by hanging is still in the statutes. 2 instances in which men were sentenced to be hung are to be returned to the Barbados Supreme Court for sentencing. The mandatory death sentence in Barbados has a lot in common with Guyana's narcotic substances laws, by which custodial sentences are imposed by magistrates without any consideration of the offender and any mitigating or other circumstances being taken into account. And that although the Presidential Commission of NCDs has been established, much work is left to be done. Crystal Macklingam reports.
Too many Guyanese are suffering from at least one non-communicable disease, and a Presidential Commission on NCDs has been established to address this matter. But according to Chief Medical Officer Shamdeo Prasad, a major problem in Guyana is that when one person is identified with a non-communicable disease, it is a lifelong challenge for that individual to maintain a healthy lifestyle. There is also a challenge for the authorities to provide such a person with adequate medication and services that would aid that individual's continuous productiveness.
One of the issues that came up repeatedly, even at the level of our commission's meeting, is that the impact that NCDs can have on our workforce and persons not able to, attend to their work in a diligent manner. They miss work, they expend a lot of both government resources and their own in seeking and obtaining health care, all of which against diseases that are pretty much preventable.
The Chief Medical Officer addressing participants of a one-day workshop held for the Presidential Commission on NCDs on Wednesday. Dr. Prasad explained that there are some conditions that many persons inherit with their genetic makeup, but unhealthy diets and lack of physical activity are also impediments to good health. He says that another contributing factor that cannot be overlooked is that some individuals develop habits, such as addictions, which promote and enhance the acceleration towards NCDs.
The Commission still, I think, needs to find firm footing as it attempt to address this really huge task. Lots of these conditions are not necessarily just that someone has gotten an illness, we can give them a vaccine or offer them a medication and they can be cured, but many of these conditions, first of all, could be avoided.
According to the CMO, in Guyana, the life expectancy rate has increased, and this means that when persons live longer lives, they are prone to developing illnesses which are often NCDs.
So we have much more elderly persons now in our society, and as naturally as some of us get older, we have these genetic predisposition, we may develop some of these conditions too. So the conditions have to be really right, as it were, to address them.
However, he added that regardless of the present situation in the country with regard to NCDs, the Presidential Commission on NCDs will work towards improving the overall health of the nation simultaneously as healthcare facilities up their game in the treatment and services they provide. Reporting for HGP Nightly News, I am Kristen Macklingam.
Government's Interim Management Committee on Wednesday regained control of the Guyana Public Service Cooperative Credit Union after the High Court threw out previous orders. The union has been at the center of a scandal recently. Rodin James reports.
After the Co-op Department booted the management team of the Public Service Credit Union last month, an interim management committee was set up to manage the affairs of the organization, but the old management team had filed an injunction to remain on the premises. That injunction was, however, overturned after it was found that the complainant had been untruthful. The interim management committee, which is now back in charge of things, is chaired by Commissioner of the Guyana Lands and Survey, Mr. Trevor Ben. The credit union is a multi-billion-dollar organization with over 14,000 members. In an interview on Wednesday, Mr. Ben said that based on initial inquiries, it was found that for the most part, the management team was not following the rules that govern the credit union.
It has not had annual general meetings for more than 8 years. And it has not had its audited statements prepared and finalized for more than 10 years. And it has not paid, most importantly, dividends to the 14,000 members since 2010. So a number of members, as I understand it, had been writing to the Chief Co-ops Development Officers complaining about the tardy way in which the union was run and asking for the intervention of the government.
The interim management committee, which Mr. Ben is heading, was mandated to look at the issues affecting the union and to have them resolved over a one-year period, as well as to hold elections so that the union can be handed back to its members through the process. The IMC has already initiated audits, but the presence of the old members in the buildings for the past few days has raised some concerns about tampering with evidence to have a smooth investigation.
That's a real and present danger. We have been talking about that, but I should let you know that even before they were let back in, we were having difficulty identifying some documents. We were seeing the payments in the computer, but we couldn't identify the vouchers to support the payments. And these payments include travel overseas, payment for hospitalization, payment for representation by one member of the management committee who somehow secured a payment from the union to represent the union.
There has been some troubling information coming to light about former members' misconduct in the past few days, during which they were granted the opportunity to stay at the premises of the co-op.
Yeah, well, just to say that what I'm hearing today is that although the former members have been off of the committee for almost a month, checks were written yesterday and the day before for the monthly emoluments and for other payments to the members of the IMC, which borne out what we said, that they were eager to get back in there to put their hands on the money, and I find that to be very troubling.
Mr. Ben contended that because the organization is a multi-billion-dollar entity, it is not ruled out that persons want to get their hands into the coffers, hence the fight to remain in the building. At the end of the IMC's tenure, it is hoped that an annual general meeting will be held, as well as an investigation to get things back on stream at the credit union. Roy Den James, HGP Nightly News.
Thank you, Roy. Then Australian gold mining company Troy Resources wants to undertake other projects in Guyana in Region 7 in 2018. Additional jobs could be created. Kristen Buckingham reports.
Providing jobs for any workforce is one thing, but ensuring that employees are trained properly and allowed to develop their skills is what any international company should focus on to ensure that it helps to develop that workforce. That's what Chief Executive of Troy Resources, Ken Nielsen, says.
In terms of ability of the local people and the training we have given them, it's very pleasing because, you can walk away and say, we have done it reasonably well and these guys will look after it, because really they're not working for Troy, they're working for themselves, because job satisfaction, job security, it all depends on your input or their input in this case, and once you get that ingrained in people, I think your life becomes much.
Mr. Nielsen explained that over 90% of the staff at Troy Resources are Guyanese and that his company is more than pleased with the way in which locals are performing. That's why his company is planning to pursue other projects in Guyana in the near future because the local workforce is dependable, he says.
It's very good because particularly seeing that we have quite a lot of Amerindian working with us, and they are actually mixing very well with what we do. I don't know if anybody has any other views on this, but I think we're all quite reasonably comfortable with that.
He added that Troy Resources was under what he says is a reasonable amount of financial stress lately, but it is on the road to recovery, and once that hurdle is overcome, then good news is in store for local employees.
Sort this all out. We hope to be debt-free in terms of the bank loans by the end of this year, which will then allow us to focus harder on finding more around us. We're continually looking also elsewhere to see whether there is any JVs or any other projects in Guyana that we could actually get involved in. But that will only come after the end of this year, because then we should be able to free up more money.
Reporting for HGP Nightly News.